Hi, I'm Stephen Gray with the Positive Identity Podcast with Ron Bush. And
Hello, everybody.
This is the beginning of something special, Ron. It is November 11th, 2020, and the world keeps going on. But today, something special is happening. This podcast is being set up to bring America together. Ron and I are going to be the ones that do it. But we're not going to do it alone. Ron, do you think we can do this? I feel like, it's about Asian, Black, Hispanic, and white people in a diverse, eclectic society. How do we bring together people who are uniquely different, and yet we are human beings in the same as well? And we're going to be honored and focused on what the good people of all different backgrounds are doing and learn from them, be inspired by them, and take action to do the same as well. We're here to change perception because positive perception creates positive action. And we are going to find out who these positive people are. And ideally, you'll hear in this podcast, will change you. And you'll be someone that will be inspired by as well. So, Ron, that's the game plan. What do you think?
I'm totally down. I think my soul and my subconscious is healed after the election. My emotions that I usually suppress and pay attention to, never. I've allowed myself to process them and to feel them through. I've been able to do some journaling to further understand some of the emotions that were attached to the political environment that I had inside myself during this time period. And I am even more committed. If I was 100% committed to unifying the nation under the flag of positive identity, I'm 110% now.
I agree. I think there's a feeling by a lot of people that, there's two ways we can go. We can either put the knife in, try to take out whoever we feel our enemy is, whether it's culturally, politically, whatever. Or we could say, you know what, maybe there's another way. Maybe there's good in the great majority of people. We talk about the silent majority. Maybe there's that good majority. And that good majority is one that will define this country.
Right.
So.
There's that old phrase. What is it? What's the phrase? If you dig a grave, make sure you dig two. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Those two sayings come to mind when I think of where we're at in this country. Number one, do unto others. I think that's pretty easy. And, treat people how you would want to be treated, I think, is a powerful thing, Right. And, I was thinking about that earlier today, and I'm thinking about where we're at right now. I was like, wow, we have some great opportunities to really get people to think differently. If anger or depression or resentment or whatever negative emotion we have based on on our country, on our political system, whatever, races, now is the time to reevaluate that and take a different eye towards how we can reconcile and get along with people that we don't agree with.
I couldn't agree more.
Last night, if I can interject, and he's going to remain nameless, but last night, because comedy is starting here in LA again. Last night I was at a show with some comedians, and one of the comedians there is a Black Republican. Okay,
wow.
Very much so, and he says some extraordinarily challenging things that. Let's just say I just vehemently disagree with, but we're friends. And we joke and we laugh together. And he's a perfect example of someone that I don't have to agree with. And we can actually have some pretty serious conversations about race and equality and the benefits or the good and the bad and the ugly of both parties, but still share a beer, have a drink, laugh, tell jokes, give each other a hug at the end of the night. You know, and I'll probably see him out again tonight. You know, that's how my life is. My life is filled with people who see things differently. And I don't want to be around people who agree with everything I say. I don't learn. I don't
It's
grow.
impossible. Well, we never agree on everything. It's just the nature of reality is we'll disagree on stuff.
Right.
It's interesting. I was in my Bible group last night, and I don't really tell people this, but I want to tell people on this podcast.
Wait a minute, Stephen, you're in a Bible group and you're a professor at USC and you associate with guys like me. You are the most interesting man in America. Continue.
I know, I'm all over the place. And the thing is that I've never told anyone this. I really don't advertise this, but the last major party candidate I voted for was Obama in 2008. Since then, I voted Green Party, you know, and people are always like, well, why are you doing that? Why do you vote Green Party? First, it's you're throwing your vote away. Then it's like, you know, you're actually supporting the other side. And I'll get Trump supporters and Biden supporters both saying that and stuff like that. I got that point because I felt like there has to be a way to be on everybody's side. That if you choose one side, theoretically, that would make you on the other side against something or against somebody. And I was feeling this around 2011 that, you know what, there has to be a way to like bring, like unify and heal. And so I did something that to me, you know, my ex-girlfriend, Tamara, she was like, this is crazy. Like, well, you're voting green? And I'm like, yeah, because I have to let people know that I'm not against them. And I have to let them know that when I engage in the system, when I engage in culture, that I'm engaging from a place where there has to be a way for us to be seen on the same team, not just politically, but also racially and culturally. And, you know, for us to move forward, this podcast is about highlighting people who exist outside of that political spectrum. There are people who, in their day-to-day lives, are changing people and changing the world in positive ways. And, you know, there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast, and you'll obviously vote for major parties, and that's a very normal thing. You know, you got to advocate for your side. But, you know, in the people that I talk to, and, you know, you talk to your Black Republican comedian friend, you know, I talk to my white Democrat friends and white Republican friends, you know, I see things where there's hope and that there are some fundamental places where people are on the same team, and that our relationship with reality should not be one where it's our entire focus is on how we're against each other, but our focus is on how we're on the same team. And thus those other views then become oriented around that place where there is that universalness to how we feel about the world. And this applies to people, white people of different political spheres. This applies to people who have different racial spheres. And in this podcast, we're going to focus on people of different racial spheres doing things that I like to think any decent person of any racial community would be like, that's the way. And that's not something you need to vote for. That's something that literally you're voting for every day. You're choosing every day to be a certain type of person. And that's kind of what I'm looking for right now.
Yeah, no, I like that. It was interesting when you were talking, I was thinking about one of my high school friends, one of my high school best friends, Morgan Woods. I don't know what happened to him. It's just one of those things, like when you separate and go to college, I just lost contact with him over the years, you know, so it's been years now. But, you know, Morgan Woods, white guy, and his mom, which, by the way, if they see me, hi guys, I've been for real, look, I'm shaved. Anyway, I have gray hair now, you know.
That gray hair is fake. It's Ron actually trying to make himself look distinguished. You know, you're 32 or something, 34. You know, it's just one of those.
Still black and still proud, you know. But when my father and mom got divorced, and I was, you know, in between the ages of like 15 and 16, and I had to go to job interviews or something like that, Morgan's mom would let me borrow her car if I needed it. Oh. You know what I mean? And she was this community mom. Lillian Maynor is another one. Just these community moms.
Right.
That, you know, most of the people in our areas were at the time from broken homes, you know, there was there's mostly like divorcees, single moms, you know, living in the apartment complex that we lived in. And Morgan lived in the housing development down the street, you know, middle income home, you know, very nice in the whole 9 yards, you know, and But these are people that didn't see color back in the 80s. This is, that were practicing community love and support, back then. I don't know what their political beliefs were.
Right.
None of it, and, in Philly and Jersey, a lot of the Italians, maybe there was a little racial tension between the blacks and the Italians for a period of time. Maybe.
I don't know. We'll look at that someday. You might be right.
Maybe there were some racial disagreements going on throughout Philadelphia with, Frank Rizzo, the old racist mayor, and all the things that were going on back then. But what was apparent is that as I'm thinking back on this, back then, we all knew that we were in this together. And back then, people went out of their way to help people in their community. You knew you knew who your neighbors were. You knew the families that lived in your area. You knew the kids that lived in the area. When I was coming up as a child in Philadelphia, if grandmama or somebody on a patio or a porch saw me and my friends or me and my brother or somebody else doing something wrong and there weren't no other adults around, they'd be, boy, you know better than to be doing that. I'm going to call your mother. Or, that's obviously a sister. But,
right.
White families do the same thing. Are you supposed to be doing that? Does your mother know where you're at? It was community parenting, And it wasn't until we were fed racism that we reacted with racism, And my mother, Jamaican immigrant, always made sure that I was exposed to as many different races as possible as a child. So I grew up with a more diverse mindset, and I don't see that today. I don't see kids, first of all, playing in the streets.
I know it's a different world.
They're on Xbox. But besides that, when you see kids in malls or out there like that, and you don't see parents saying, "Hey, are you doing the right thing? Right. I don't know you, but are you doing the right thing? Hey, does your parents approve of what you're doing? Hey," you don't see that as much now. People will look and they'll turn their eye and they'll get on their phone and they'll act like they don't see it and not get involved. And, because of those people, Lillian Maynor and Mrs. Woods, Mom Melinda Jenkins, and all these people that were second moms.
Right.
I have the perspective that I have towards race that I have now. And I just ask people to see the value in that.
And it's funny because I want to leave with what you said. Obviously, I could jump in and say, "Oh, here's my backstory," and we'll get to that someday.
Absolutely.
Ron's message that we all are citizens of a nation, and being a citizen means taking action, not once every 2 years or 4 years, but really every minute of your lives, is the message that I think we should get from this, from people who are different, who look at each other and they're different. And they say, you know what, there is a universalness to what we believe is right. And so I want us to think about that. I'm going to take a second to think about what Ron went through. And then let's start talking about some people who are inspiring today and what they're doing. So, yes, please jump in, Ron.
I just want to say one thing. And I can't remember where I heard this. Maybe it was the pastor of my Baptist church when I was a kid. But it popped into my mind now since my mind is reaching back into the archives, like it is right now.
The computer program is like, hey, we got to find some shit back here.
Where did this memory come from? But the paraphrase is this: your community isn't safe if your wives are not safe. It doesn't matter who you are. Your community isn't safe if your children aren't safe.
Right.
Your color of your skin matters not. Your community isn't safe until your husbands and fathers are safe, till your brothers and sisters are safe. And if you feel that the 4 or 5 blocks that you live on is your community, and that only the people that look and feel and agree with you are your community, then you may be the problem of why we're not safe in the community. And so the question is, from a religious and from a social responsibility perspective, is how do we make sure that all brothers and sisters, regardless of the color of our skin or the gender that we are, can be safe?
Be quiet for a second. I want you to think about that.
I don't know where this stuff comes from. It just pops out.
I gotta say, I want to joke for a second. I love when you pop out, Ron. That was a great pop out right there. But for people who are listening, that's a big time shit that Ron said. And I am going to swear once in a while. I know obviously you want a family friendly experience, but here's the thing. It's 2020. There's no rules. And so on that note.
And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, Stephen is the respectable one. I am the one who will curse without reason, warrant, and not knowingly. So just excuse me. Whenever I do curse, just understand I don't realize I do. I'm a comedian. Continue.
That's true. It's just, now every time I swear, people are like, Stephen, kind of let me down here. I was kind of thinking that you'd have it together. But I do have it together, and we are going to now talk about some inspiring people. So, Ron, I'm going to screen share right now. And we're going to look at, we have 2 people we want to focus on today. And in honor of the fact that you and me, a white guy and a black guy, we're going to focus on a member of the Hispanic community first. People talk about, all right, the Hispanic community is a future of America. They're going to play a big part of America. So in honor of our soon-to-be overlords, let's jump in and talk about our friends here. But all right, joking aside, this is a really great story. So college wrestler in Iowa saves coworker's life at Walmart. So Ron, I'm going to read through this thing. And, obviously, if you want to jump in with any commentary, please do so. So Diego Aguilera is a late-blooming wrestler who made his way from Texas to Buena Vista University in Storm Lake, Iowa this summer to pursue his passion. As Aguilera has learned, good wrestlers need the ability to think, quickly act, decisively, and, most importantly, execute in big moments. The freshman wrestler's fortuitous path to school and a job in Iowa put him in the right place at the right time a few weeks ago to exercise those traits and help save a life. And here's Diego right here. On September 17th, Aguilera was starting his first day of work at the Walmart in Storm Lake. He's being trained as an associate in the produce department by a colleague in his 60s. They stocked shelves into the evening, then retired to a break room in the back. Then Aguilera said the man clutched his chest and slumped over a box of bananas. I saw his head start tilting back, and he just looked more and more relaxed, recalled Aguilera, who doesn't remember the name of his new coworker. He said he didn't feel well and couldn't breathe, and his face turned white, and he started sweating. The man was having a heart attack. Aguilera jumped to action. He checked the man's pulse and felt it slow down. He started chest compressions, which he learned through his high school wrestling. And when the man regained consciousness, Aguilera asked him questions to help him stay awake. I was asking him about his kids, Aguilera said, their names, their ages, just so he could focus on something. I figured getting him to think about his kids would keep him engaged. After a few minutes, the man finally spoke. We need a code white, Aguilera recalled him saying, which is Walmart's code for an accident. Aguilera sprinted out of the break room to manager Christy Wagner, who confirmed the story when reached by the register. She called for the police and an ambulance. When they arrived, Aguilera helped guide them to the back room. The man was taken to a hospital in Sioux City. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, Sioux City.
Sioux City, right?
Sioux City, Iowa, yeah.
It wasn't until the next day that Aguilera felt the weight of the situation. In my mind, it wasn't really scary at that moment, he said. It was more, what can I do right now to help? It wasn't a matter of being scared or thinking I can't do this. There was no time to think about it. I had to keep moving. Just thinking about it and remembering what it was like, man, it gives me chills. It was something of a small miracle that Aguilera even ended up in Storm Lake. He grew up in Pharr, Texas, the actually, you know what? I'll stop here for a second because I want to like respond to what happened, and then we'll start to look into more about his background.
Absolutely, yeah. Go ahead.
That's interesting. Being in the moment and taking action. I'm a big planner. That's my biggest enemy is I have to like meticulously plan everything so it's perfect. But that's not how life works. Life doesn't care about your plans. Things are thrown at you. In a second, you got to figure out who you really are. And it says something to do that. Doesn't it, Ron?
Absolutely. First of all, Diego's fine. He's cute. You see that picture of him? I was like, okay.
See, look at Diego's making out. He's got a nice looking black man.
Diego's fine. I saved my life. My heart.
Oh gosh. My heart. I don't think he signed up for this.
Oh Lord, my heart. But Diego, but Diego is most people, right?
Right.
How many of us, if we saw that happening, would have tried to do something within our power? Diego had a skill set that allowed him to act immediately. And I think most people know how to do CPR, but the fact of the matter is that he used that, stepped in there, and saved this man's life. It was a beautiful thing. And I've been to Sioux City, Iowa. I've been to Boise, great people. It's a farming state. And so they have more conservative sensibilities, for the most part. And being a comedian that's named the scariest gay man in America, when the first time that I ever went to Iowa, I was worried, how I'd be received. Right. And they are beautiful, beautiful people out there, just wonderful. And, listen, again, most people are, right? And friendly and curious, accepting, conversational, he's just openly conversational, and so Diego.
It's so weird. As a member of as someone from Los Angeles and Boston, my boss decides to talk to people you think you're crazy. You would just start randomly talking to them. It's like, oh boy, you're a psycho here. Like, but that's great. And that's a beautiful thing. That's great to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're always going to, listen, wherever you go, you're always going to have the guy or the man or the woman that says or does something evil, mean, right? That's trying to hurt your feelings. But, what's important for us all to remember is the only reason that person is trying to make you feel bad is because that's how they feel inside. They want you to feel how they feel. A person who lives in joy and self-love doesn't need to hurt anybody else, doesn't need to diminish anybody else, doesn't need to make themselves feel superior, And they're helpful and of service. And old Diego there,
right?
I would hope and I would imagine has made a friend for life in that gentleman whose life he saved, I almost drowned in a pool about a decade ago, about 10 years ago.
Oh, what happened?
I was at this pool party and, we're drinking and I was maybe drunk, most likely. Slipped, fell into the pool, took in a good lungful of water, and sunk to the bottom like a rock, and this place was packed. And the guy that I just met, that I barely know, what's up, Lee Wilburn, he saw it, what happened.
Right.
And he went down, he pulled me up and put me on the side of the pool and helped me vomit out a lungful of water, you know? He's like, dude, what happened? Like, bro, I don't even know. He's like, I was standing, next thing you know, I was falling to the bottom of the pool. I didn't even know, you know?
Holy crap.
Similar to what Diego did. But again, guy, you know, if I'm not mistaken, Lee is from Missouri or someplace maybe Central State guy. You know, the states that voted red. Surely, you know, if he was a malicious person, he could have let me take another lungful of water. Surely.
It's interesting you say that. You're tapping into something super interesting here, that in the vast and the great majority, the good majority of people, there is that mechanism that kicks in. Because you said something very interesting, that it's an opinion that you are stating, that we will work to find out how true it is. That you said Diego represents the vast majority of people. And I would say that this podcast is going to go with that assumption, because that's an important thing. If you assume the best from people, there's gray area in our relationships with each other.
Right.
When you look into that gray, do you see darkness or do you see light? And that, if we see light, we respond as such. If we see darkness, we respond as such. And Ron, in seeing into the majority of humanity in America and seeing light, that's going to change how you act, right, Ron? You're going to start to treat people in a certain way.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My first business partner, Yang Sam Park, he was a Nokia Datacom engineer. And this is when I was selling semiconductors to manufacturers, you know, and doing global supply chain management and such. And I was a rising star in the country as you know, doing what I do, you know. So and I got introduced to him, and we opened our own business at 23 years old. I was the youngest owner of an independent semiconductor distributorship in the country, and the only African American.
That's amazing.
And
that's awesome.
Thank you. And you know, I moved from Chicago. At the time I was living in Chicago, I moved there, and I met Sam and his wife Kay at the airport. We immediately clicked. We had obviously been talking on the phone a bunch, you know, because this is before, ladies and gentlemen, this is before internet. This is before www. This is before.
As a millennial, I'm scared. How did you meet? How are meetings set up? Like, what did you do when you were born?
A friend of mine referred me to him, that, you know, a longtime friend of mine, Mark Wilson, was doing business with him. He's like, you guys got to meet. I got on the phone with him. We talked on the phone a bunch. After a couple of weeks, we decided, okay, this is making sense. I flew to Atlanta, and him and his wife met me at the airport. And you know, Sam Park, God bless him, man. He's you know, he first of all, Sam Park had went to Korean University, and his parent, he had to flee. He fled North Korea during the Korean War.
Wow.
To get to South Korea, right? Really interesting story,
right? And
then came to the United States for a better life. He met me at the airport and decided, you know, we're going to do this. You're great. We like each other. We got along really well. And so I moved into his house. He had a spare bedroom. And I moved into his house until I found a place for about 2 months, until I found a suitable place, you know? And And so here's this kid barely weaned from West Philly, but making a lot of money, because Sam believed, instead of going to a hotel, I want to know who you are. Come to my home, live with us, know who we are as people. So by the time we get business going, we'll know if we want to do this business deal, you know?
Right.
And so I was this black guy living in a Korean was their first language. You know, the May and Marvin were the kids. You know, they spoke English, obviously, but, you know, I was listening to them speak Korean the entire time. And I started to learn how to understand. I can still understand Korean when it's spoken to me. I can't speak it, but I can still understand when I'm hearing it. And there's another person right there who became such a powerful mentor for me. You know, I have this, Yeah, at the time I'm 23 years old. At the time he's like 50, 55 years old. Nokia datacom engineer with patents for modems and early data communication chipsets and all sorts of stuff. Very intelligent guy, very accomplished man, mentoring me in business. That wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't, until Sam Park, the only people that I really interacted with that were Asian were owners of the corner stores, and they were behind bulletproof glass in West Philadelphia.
Wow, that's a perception right there. That is a perception of reality. That's all you know. And so you're going to react as such. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I, just how much we both learn from each other, about our cultures, about the reasons why. Sam Park, I mean, again, you're dealing with a rich Asian man who he sees when he drives through certain parts of town and he sees poor black people doing the things. He could not understand why they did it. Right. And so he had racism towards black people. He had it, but he wasn't racist by I hate. He was, I don't understand. And they always treat me bad. He goes, why do black people always treat me bad? And Are you back?
I'm back. All right. So black people always treat you bad. I'll just cut it right back in.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And so, but by living with him and when you're working together, you own a business. And we were business partners for 4.5 years,
right.
And we became very close and we understood each other, and he learned an extraordinary amount about African Americans and about America and what made America click. And his entire family learned, and I learned too. And that's a beautiful thing. And I think I'm about to lose you again. Eyes. Are you frozen?
No, I'm still here, baby. I'm still with you. All right. Perfect. There is nothing chilled about how I'm feeling about you right now. All right. I mean, so this podcast, and again, I'm speaking, I'm very much narrating what's happening right here because so much of this is going to be Ron and I and how we're reacting to people, how we're thinking about this stuff. I'm not going to narrate as much in the future, but I'm sort of setting the tone now. So for people who are listening to this as it comes out, or you're going back in time being like, all right, how do these knuckleheads convince a section of America to listen to their shit?
Right.
I want you to know how we figured this thing out. And so it's because we're going to I want to go back to Diego, and I want us to think about where he came from now, because we kind of got a sense of where you came from.
Texas.
And so let's take a look. All right. So Diego, let's screen share. And we had someone else too we want to get in, but let's, if we get to him, All right. So Texan, he grew up in Far, Texas, the oldest of 3 siblings. He didn't start, he's an older child like me. I get, we're all heroes, us older siblings. So this is all very, very normal. He didn't start wrestling until his freshman year of high school. That first day, what'd you say?
No comment.
No comment. All right. For now, no comment for now. That first day of practice uncovered a hidden passion. Aguilera wrestled all 4 years for the Wolverines. And as a senior, he went 33-7 while competing at 113 pounds. Holy crap. He's only 113 pounds? My God. All right. Yeah. Oh boy. Let's not talk about how much I weigh. All right. I had never done a combat sport or anything like that, he said, but I fell in love with it. Stepping on the mat for the first time, it was crazy. Ahead of his senior season, Aguilera attended a wrestling camp in Iowa. For the first time, he saw the passion the state has for the sport. Wrestling is big in spots in Texas, but nothing quite like in Iowa. On his way home from the camp, Aguilera remembered thinking to himself, I have to go back. Not long after his senior season, Buena Vista made contact. That was all Aguilera needed. He officially signed in May, moved to Storm Lake in mid-August. And here we are, signing him to Buena Vista University. Mark Rial, actually, I'll stop right there. So what are we seeing so far, Ron, about our good friend Diego? What's sort of popping out to you from some of this stuff right here? Besides the fact that he does not, like, we need to get him some food. Like, that dude needs to be fed. Like, 113 pounds, I'm concerned. I'm legitimately, like, I feel like we have to show a drive there, like, right now and get him, like, a steak.
Well, first of all, let's remember that anybody who's competing like that, he's definitely probably healthier than both of us at 113 at 113 pound, you know. He's just, a man, and he's a small frame guy, you know.
Right.
It's not like he's not some bruiser guy, and so he's definitely lightweight, flyweight, whatever you want to call it, in that weight class. But what I'm hearing is someone who is, they're just curious about life. He's young. He's figuring things out.
He feels normal. He's discovering the world, right?
Okay. What I will say is that, and I'm going to direct this to to our liberal brothers and sisters that are watching this right now. There's Diego is going from red state to red state. He's going from a place where there is decidedly a lot more Latinos than in Iowa. So he was going from being a minority to a definite minority. And throughout all of that, it sounds like he's kept a positive identity on himself. And he has a positive identity towards other races. And nothing seems, if you're wrestling in Iowa, you're not a racist, per se, hopefully, because you're wrestling with so many different people and you're exposed to so many different cultures. And so I hear in him something that we all can carry along, and that is stay healthy, be open to helping others, and do things to find yourself, push yourself, get outside of your comfort zone. Beautiful stuff.
It's interesting. Sport. You talk about the sports thing. Sports, in a world where it seems like there are no rules, sports are one of the few areas where there are rules. No matter what you are, that ring for wrestling stays the same. The way the holds are, the way the calls are. Sure, I know obviously there's some history about, we could talk about reffing and stuff, like all this stuff. But again, in a world without rules, it is by far the thing that has a set of rules that are the same for everybody. Right. And it's interesting, you talk about the healthy thing, and I want you to elaborate more on that in a second. But the rules thing to me about sports made me love it. It made me see, because I grew up, in Boston, and, City of Champions. We had people from David Ortiz, Paul Pierce, Tom Brady. I don't watch enough hockey to. I'm gonna get killed for this one. So sorry, folks. Sorry, Bruins fans. I don't remember. Don't worry about it. Yeah. But that's how it was. People from Miguel Cabrera made that great steal, and actually, it was Dave Roberts made that great steal. We had people from all different backgrounds doing this thing, and I grew up, and that's my formative experience. People from all different backgrounds are going to make me a champion, and so I'm going to start shit talking New York fans. And I tell you this, and I'm wow, this is great. But sports are a thing where it helps to clarify and clean out those parts of you that wonder about people. We can talk about the system, stuff like that, and that's a whole thing in itself. But sports, just the way it works, is that's where the 3-point line is. That's where first base is. You either get there or you don't, and it doesn't matter who you are. And there's something healthy about that, to me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, no, you're 100% right. It's unfortunate that, first of all, to all youth out there or anybody who plays sports professionally in high school or in college as well, I honestly, my heart bleeds for you during this pandemic. So
Yeah.
many, so many students from so many backgrounds, from Iowa to New York, from New York to Detroit, from Detroit to Kansas City. You know, no matter who you are, if you play sports and you are getting scholastic scholarships, you have the potential to go pro. And this is happening. This is very valuable time to your life, and my heart bleeds and goes out to you. And
Totally agree.
Yeah. All I can tell you, it's not the same, but it's similar. I toured as a stand-up comedian. Things were getting to a point where I was really excited with what was happening, and now nothing is happening whatsoever. And so my heart bleeds because I understand. And when you play sports, when you practice comedy, when you work on teams, whether it's corporate, philanthropic, whatever it is, you get to know people and you get to hear their stories. You know, my brother is a public defender in outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, in New Bern. Baptist church going man. And he helps. He could be a different person, but he helps poor Black and poor white and poor Latin people defend themselves, get child support, get justice, you know? And so people like Diego, what they don't realize is that they are also, in a way, racial ambassadors. You know, I was a racial ambassador to Sam Park. You know, Diego was a racial ambassador to where he was. Stephen, when you're at predominantly Black gangster rap concerts, spitting rhymes with the best of them. You know what I mean?
I've been watching 8 Mile. I've been watching 8 Mile to learn what needs to be done.
Throwing down. You know what I mean? You're an ambassador for who you are, right? And so something that I tell, you know, I mentor some people, and something I don't talk about much, but what I tell people when they are presented with adversity from other people, act as if they're hurting more than you are. Act as if they're actually requesting to be heard, or be seen. Act as if they need you to be a better person than they are right now. And it's not always easy. You know, as we were discussing before, you know, the election fired me up like it did so many people. And it's really easy to get discouraged because of how people vote. But I can assure you of a few things. How somebody votes doesn't necessarily reflect on the type of person that they are. I know awful, horrible human beings that are Democrats. And they have no excuse to be such awful, horrible people. And I know people that are equally as awful, that are Republican and that are independent. So for me, when I get text messages after this election, since the election, Stephen, I didn't, after our last conversation, the next 5 text messages that I got within the hour, every person that texted me was of a different race. Every single person.
Wow. Out of 5.
You were one of them. My buddy who is half Dominican, half Russian. Black Russian, a Black Russian who born and raised in Russia, speaks fluent Russian with the full Russian accent.
It's like I'm going to Black Russian tonight to drink. I'm sick. Inspired.
Yeah, he's a unicorn. He's a unicorn. Filipino.
Okay.
Vietnamese. Okay. Latin. How can you not be happy to know that is who you are? That's who I am. I am friends to this diverse group of people. And when I post something on Facebook, some of the most conservative people that are friends of mine, they follow me because they follow me as a stand-up comedian on my comedy page. Some of the most conservative people, they love me. When are you coming back to Salt Lake City? When are you coming back to such and such? When are you coming back to such and man? When you come back?
People are complex, and that's the toughest thing. It's the beautiful thing and toughest thing about the human condition. Yeah. There is no book on people.
Yeah.
How about this? Let's figure. I want to finish reading about Diego, and then let's sort of give commentary on it. I know we had 2 articles planned for today, but for you people listening, I am a producer by trade, and in my mind, I'm like, we're keeping this thing under 60 minutes. But I know drive times are 22 minutes one way on average. So I know how this thing works. I'm running some clocks in my head. So
22 minutes in what state? Not in California.
You're right. Oh my gosh. For California, this is one way. We're a one-way podcast. All right. Okay, good. You inspire me. Right. I can build it for the audience.
One-way podcast.
But we're appealing to people all over the United States. All right. So we're going to someone run this thing. All right. Let's see. Boom. We're in. All right. So there he is looking all happy. His friends. Only 19 likes for Twitter. We got to fix that. All right. So Mark Rial, the Beavers coach, was blown away. Actually, how long is this thing? Okay. Right.
Yeah.
More for you. Okay. So Mark Rial, the Beavers coach, was blown away when Aguilera shared his Walmart story. It's pretty amazing, Rial said. I'm just so impressed with the maturity. He's in a new place, far away from home. So for him to do that without a second thought is pretty incredible. Mm-hmm. Always put yourself in these situations. Know, what would you do? I hope to react the same way he did. Aguilera's Walmart episode has added to an interesting first few months in Storm Lake. Weeks before, he'd been exposed to another Buena student who had tested positive for the coronavirus. He had to quarantine for 2 weeks, so he attended all of his classes virtually and did push-ups and squats to stay in shape. Then, just last week, hey, it's a tough life out there. Then, just last week, the American Rivers Conference announced that winter sports competitions wouldn't start until Jan 1st because of the ongoing pandemic. Wrestling practices, however, began Thursday. The Beavers are aiming to improve on last year's 12th place finish at the Division III Lower Midwest Regional Tournament. Aguilera hopes to vie for the starting spot at 125 pounds. He's going the right direction.
Yeah, he's getting older.
Yes, I know. Age adds 30 to 60 pounds. After Aguilera showed his ability to act quickly and execute when it matters, Rial is excited to see his freshmen take those skills to the mat. There's a lot of things that wrestling teaches you, and those are some of them, Rial said. You ask anybody that's wrestled, those are some of the perks that people can take away from the sport. And just like that, I've rigged it so we see David Ortiz at the end of this. Mm-hmm. I called in a few people. Called in some favors.
Yeah,
and I want you to associate heroism with David Ortiz.
David Ortiz has been eating good, didn't he?
That's true. He's taken from Diego here. Like that's the story. Like, what are we missing?
Ortiz ain't missing meals since he retired, did he?
Like, oh my gosh, that dude! Think of the stuff he's eating. He's just like, I don't care. They're gonna love me no matter what.
Get in my belly. Get in. I'm sorry, David. That's body shaming, and I'm being rude. I will say this about first of all, Diego. You know, who, by the way, out of all interest, because I guarantee there's a connection. What was the second article?
So the second article, this is one that's going to be awesome. This will be a bit of a preview type thing. Let me shift this a little bit so I can see it. All right.
Damn, Dave Ortiz, boy got belly. Go ahead.
This fifth grader is racing to get 100K meals to people in need before Thanksgiving.
Okay, so first of all, we got to share that online. Next, continue.
I've already shared it online, baby. Way ahead of you, all right? And the positive identity, it's under budget and ahead of schedule. And so... Unlike
the U.S. government.
As much as we're trying to focus, here's the thing. To me, Ron, the U.S. government is the people. This government thing right here, that's a thing for organizational capacity.
Right.
We're the real government. And so the government here, the government's going to talk about that kid who's 5 years old, who's going to do more by age 5, unfortunately, than most of us are going to do. But we're going to be inspired by that. We're going to learn that, you know what? Doesn't matter what age you are.
Kid up. Put that kid up. Let's get a look at this. Let's
we're going to throw Diego. This is about Diego right now. I don't want to focus on.
I want to show you something. I want to show you where my mind is at on this one. Let me show you where my mind is at on this one.
All right, so let's get this down.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am going to draw a connection. I'm going to draw a connection before I even read the article. Continue.
Okay. All right. So we're going to stop share and we're going to respond to Diego's story of saving. I think it was in Walmart, I believe, correct? It was in Walmart, right. So the thing with Diego, all right, so your reactions after hearing about everything in that story of Diego saving his coworker's life, literally, that's how much time you had. Because, like, you know, when this stuff happens, like, literally your life in fractions of a second can go radically one way or the other. So what's your reaction?
You know, my reaction is a little complicated. Okay. First of all, I'm very impressed with the young man. And I'm sending him good vibes and love that he achieves all of his goals that he sets out for. And I'm so glad that he was able to save that man's life. For me, and why I love this podcast and why I love Positive Identity is because ultimately, Diego is not alone. Diego's not an outlier.
Right.
You know, and that's the problem. You know, I heard these ladies earlier today at the grocery store. You know, they were from out of town and they were talking about COVID, you know, and, you know, the one lady said, I mean, just be good. Just be a good person is what the woman said.
Well, that line is a loaded line. I've heard it before.
Yeah, the phrase that I heard, you know, just be a good person, you know, and that's what Diego is. He's just a good person. You know, there's no mystery to that. You know, we all know right from wrong. We know it. You know, if God came right now and told you, do not do anything wrong for the next 24 hours, or you will burn in hell. No one would go to hell because we all know right from wrong. Period.
That's a line. Ooh, that's a line right there. I want to think on that. I want to spend this next week between podcasts because that's a line. Here's the thing, you know, the good majority. I like to think if we see someone fall over, the good majority of people will go to that person.
Absolutely.
Right. They will see someone who went down and like they'll be like, all right, what needs to be done? Think about that. Instinctually, we're here to bring life to people. If someone is hurt or suffering, instinctually. Do you think it's instinct, Ron? Do you think it's a top thing? Why is that? I'm just curious because like it's a huge question that we're going to end the podcast on. and we're not going to answer it, but like I want you to sort of take a dive at it.
It's humanity. Yes, it's instinctive. Yes, it is very much instinctive. If you see a black, brown, yellow, doesn't matter, whatever the skin color is, child about to run into the street in oncoming traffic, you are going to stop that child if you can.
And white child. Don't forget us, Ron.
You're
right. You're right. I know.
You're just going to.
Yeah.
If an old woman or if a woman, man, it doesn't even let's get old out of there. If a person falls to the ground in front of you and it doesn't look hilarious.
Right. After the laughter. It's like, all right. After your pointing fingers.
Yeah. You're gonna help them. You may go home and tell your wife, your kids, oh my God, this dude ate it today. Holy shit, I wanted to laugh in his face. But what did you do? You helped.
And there's going to be one person there who cell phone being held up and down World Star style to record that, hopefully. So, there's a good majority, and then there's our cell phone. But I'm joking aside. You're right.
I don't know about most people, but the most crazy things that happen to me, there's no one ever pulls a camera out because I think people are still in shock as it happens, that their minds aren't operating quick enough to do that, The time, for instance, that a comedian here in LA who's of Latin descent was having very, very difficult mental problems at the time. So we have nothing but love for him and wish him well. But at the time, he was going through some very, very difficult things as he was confronting childhood sexual assault and all these other things.
Right.
And so his stand-up had become, I hate F-word gay people. I hate W-word, C-word white people. I hate J-word Jewish people. You know what I mean?
Dude, this dude's all over the place. Like, what the
he was in the process of having a mental breakdown, and there was a gentleman who I'm about to shoot a short commercial with, who has severe cerebral palsy, who's a comedian, and so hateful comedian started to heckle handicapped comedian, and it started getting contentious. I stopped it. I was, shall we say, mildly attacked because of it. And to make a long story short, I ended up losing my cool a little bit because guess what? I don't like being called F-word, N-word. I don't like people who have severe cerebral palsy strapped into a wheelchair being heckled and ridiculed. And he was.
I like to think that's an instinctual thing. I don't think anybody should like that instinctually. Right.
So I did something I should not have done, and I stepped in physically to get ready to beat this guy's ass. You know what I mean? Because I just was shocked at how horrible things were going in front of a crowd, in front of people, civilians, as we comedians call it, And so I drug this guy outside and I threw him up against the wall, and he's calling me all these names, and I'm about to clock him. And my buddy Cody, who's in the wheelchair, I'm about, because things are happening at 1,000,000 miles per hour, right? And the next thing I know is my leg gives out. Something hits my leg, and it's Cody in his wheelchair trying to run the other comedian over with his wheelchair. So here's me and a guy in a wheelchair attacking and trying to run over a person up against the wall. And there's a crowd of people looking around, and we all stopped in that moment and looked at ourselves. We lost it because of how ridiculous this looked.
Right.
But think about that moment. Cody is white male, Latin, handicapped, mentally challenged. And then there's me. You could say I'm all of those things in my own way, And not only was there a desire for everyone around to make sure that Cody was safe, but I also ended up having to apologize to my friend who was having his mental issues because he wasn't who he could have been. He didn't show up to be the best person he could in that moment. And I use this extreme example as an example because of what it is. We all don't show up to be the best people that we can be at times. We all hurt so bad that we do and say things that others can view as abhorrent, whatever, just horrible. But when a person is able to reflect and say, I'm sorry, call you up, man, I don't know why I did that. All I know is I value your friendship. These people, this is America. We all come from different backgrounds. We all have these burdens that we all have that cross that we bear.
Right.
And there are those times when just that perfect little cocktail of energy happens. And the next thing you know, you're an Aunt Karen trying to call the police on some bird watcher in New York. Or you're some black dude cursing out some old white lady, calling her B-word, racist, all these things because you're not feeling safe, comfortable, or you feel unheard and victimized in that moment. And this is the person that is finally going to come out to today. When you're in a grocery store or if you're driving and you see an Asian person and you're disagreeable at that moment, and the first thing that comes to your mind is racial disparagement. We've all had it in our head. And if you haven't, you're lying to yourself. You're not lying to me. Our native brothers and sisters, my God, how much have they suffered? We all get it, right?
Right.
But we also need to learn how to pull it back in. Hey, you know what? Maybe I need to calm down a little bit. Maybe I need to turn the heat down on this burner a little bit before I go ahead and say something else, Just saying.
I want that story to sort of set in people's heads a little bit about, how you were talking about how you're rising the occasion to sort of help these people out. And you said something really interesting at the very beginning, is that it wasn't on camera. I was making a joke, but I think it wasn't on camera for Diego either. Most of the good stuff that we see in this world is not on camera. And the thing is that Ron made a judgment call about society. Is that the vast majority of people are good. I made a judgment call that I believe there's a good majority, that the good majority is here. And it's not caught on camera. What we're going to do is we're going to use this podcast as a way to catch these people on camera, as a way to give them their time through their stories, through what we talk about them, to create that story that becomes real in our heads and, in a sense, is caught in our own mental camera. And ideally becomes a memory that serves as a guiding light for how we look at each other and ourselves. And so I kind of want to end the podcast, thinking about the story that you talked about personally, thinking about Diego, and thinking about how, as we talk about whatever America is, new America, whatever we think of Asian people or Black, Hispanic, Native, white, mixed, or beyond, how we sort of work forward to see ourselves as a one people in the same team who are working towards each other to stop that hurting, to stop those people from suffering, to build that greater society. So, Ron, finish this. Leave us with a word or two before we end this podcast.
Absolutely. Real quickly. How many meals was that kid trying? What was his name, and how many meals was that kid trying to get together in that article?
Like 100K meals or something like that. And again, we're going to get to that article next podcast because Thanksgiving is coming up, so we'll cover that about a week before, week and a half before.
And so going back to what you were saying, here's this kid, okay, young Black kid, 5 years old, however old he is, Okay. And he wants to get 100,000 meals to people who don't have them for Thanksgiving during a pandemic. Okay. Now, I don't know where he lives. I don't know the city, the town, the state, but I'm going to go ahead and promise you one thing. However many meals he delivers, he's going to deliver meals to people that are racially insensitive. He's going to deliver meals to people that otherwise probably don't like who he is because of the color of his skin. He's going to deliver meals to people that didn't vote how I would have preferred them to vote for whatever reason. He's going to deliver these meals in an environment where he's watching Black men and women be hunted on TV now. And he understands, and his parents have had the conversation about the racial tensions that we have in the United States. He's had the talk with his parents about how Black people handle themselves when being pulled over by police and by authority figures. And through all of that, not only is he, but his parents are helping him. His community is helping him deliver those meals to people in need. And just like Diego, number one, he's saving lives. Number two, he doesn't see race. Number three, he's taking action regardless of what he's being heard, regardless of what he's hearing and being taught, to be a better person. And that's no small feat. We all know that. Anyone who lives as an adult knows that. And so from the mouth of babes, right? Here we can look at two young kids. You got a guy 5 years old, however old, and another guy who's 19, 20 years old. Young people doing extraordinary things. And if there's any one lesson that we can all take from that, is that our final note is not written until our final breath is taken. And in between now and when that moment happens, who are you as a person?
I'll tell you this. It's not good, Ron. I want to jump in right here.
Please.
We are the government. It's the people.
Yes, brother. Yes, brother Stephen.
No matter where you feel you are on the political spectrum, these kids didn't wait for anything.
No.
They did it right now. And you are a people with a lot of power who have the ability to shape this nation. And every day you are voting however you think what it is to be good to shape this nation.
Right.
So,
and
Ron, please finish this.
I'm not interested in how you voted. I'm not interested in why you voted. I'm interested in, are you a good person? Do you mean well? And do you love this country? That's all I care about.
And on that note, this is the Positive Identity Podcast. I'm Stephen Gray, and this is Ron Bush for November 11th.
I'm the black guy.
And I'm the white guy, and you'll learn to love us both. So November 12th.
Oh my God. And by the way, Stephen, I did the ancestry.com. You know, so number one, my DNA is now with the Mormons, which they love me in Salt Lake City, so I can completely understand that.
They're going to clone you. You walk right into the trap.
They know better. You cannot have a planet with more than one Ron Bush. There's just not enough room. But you know, my mother's Jamaican. I have Native American blood in my system. So as much as I'm African American, I have a Dutch slave captain, I have 2 Irish men, and I have 3 different types of Native Indian. And when I say Native, I'm talking indigenous from South America, the Caribbean, through North America before Columbus, ladies and gentlemen. Just throwing that out there for its historical purposes. They were people here before Christopher.
I know Ron was the OG. That's the thing. People talk about who is mixing it up here in America. Ron's part of the OG group. But you know what, though? No matter when you got here, as far as we're concerned, what happens here in America affects the rest of the world. And in a world where people have extremely divergent senses of identity, race or whatever, what we do here will set the tone in that guiding light for the rest of humanity. So whether you're Asian, Black, Hispanic, Native, white, or beyond, let's work together to make a greater America for everyone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. To my Asian brothers and sisters, nothing but love. Okay. To my Korean brothers, why y'all act so black? I don't even know. Y'all blacker than me sometimes. To my white brothers and sisters, nothing but love. To my Native brothers and sisters, shall we start picking up and fighting for you more and for your needs? For my Latin brothers and sisters, nothing but love. To my white supremacist brothers and sisters, I will continue dating you as much as possible.
That took a turn. I was like, all right, he's gonna swear until his dying breath. He's gonna hunt every single one of you down. But fair enough. I did not see that coming. So I lost a bet. All right, I'm cutting this thing off.
Love is stronger than racism. Love is stronger.
That's true.
Than racism.
At the end of the day, if you can give it good, things will find a way to work itself out. On that note, we're out. See you next week for the Positive Identity Podcast.
Thank you.